What was intended to be a one-part video has turned into a two-part series because, y'all, we have 40 tips for a flawless ceremony. And by we, I mean me. Hi, I'm Jamie, your online wedding planner, and I'm here to help you navigate wedding planning so you can plan easily and stress less because you deserve a stress-free wedding day. In this video, we're going to cover the first 20 tips. Keep your eye out for the second video that will be coming out with the following 20 tips, because I want to make sure we're allotting enough time to discussing all of them and not just whizzing past them, because it's a lot to cover in a very short amount of time. Speaking of a short amount of time, without further ado, let's just jump right on into this. Now, here's what I don't want to happen with these tips. I do not want you watching this video on the day of your rehearsal being like, what are all these tips? They got to get through them. No, ma'am. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. You're going to join the master plan. There's an entire section in the wedding weekend outline dedicated to running your own rehearsal. If you do not have a coordinator, if you do not have someone who can run your rehearsal for you, you need to go over there, take a peek at this, and run your rehearsal off of that, not off of these videos. This is too much information to try to process through in a very short amount of time. These are just tips and tricks for success to make sure you've smoothed out all of the wrinkles. This is not how to run your rehearsal, okay? If you need that, if I haven't linked it up here already, I'm going to link it down in the description box below. Go sign up for the master plan and I'll walk you through how to run your own rehearsal, okay? Tip number 1, practice. Whether or not you are hosting a rehearsal at your venue, you need to practice with your wedding party. It's not complicated, okay? You walk in, you walk out, you put a smile on your face, but you'd be surprised the amount of nuances you need to kind of get through to make sure your ceremony goes off without a hitch. So the best way of doing that, especially if you're not working with a professional wedding coordinator or a professional officiant, or maybe you're DIYing your music so you don't have a professional DJ, there are a lot of potential gaps that could happen here at the ceremony, so you want to make sure that you practice going through that. That could be in a parking lot, right outside before your rehearsal dinner, okay? That could be in your actual ceremony location. Regardless, if you do not have professionals holding your hand through this and guiding you through this, you've never done this before, practice with your people. And again, if you need guidance on how to run that, there is an entire segment of the master plan that teaches you how to run your own rehearsal. Tip number 2, be sure to have reserved signs in the first row or two of each side of your wedding ceremony. Most of the time, we don't have people sitting here because they understand how weddings work because they don't live under a rock. But occasionally people will be like, oh, look, open seats. Why is nobody sitting here? I'm going to go ahead and sit here. They're not supposed to be sitting there. Reserve signs are to block the first row or two for your family members to sit there who may not be the first 30 seats because they're either walking around and talking with people or they're a part of your processional, which is the walk-in. By the way, if you need the entire framework for how to plan a perfect ceremony, there's this video right here. Go check that out. That includes all of the order of everything that you should be looking at as you're going through all this. So these are just tips. This is like an accompaniment video to that original video. If you want to see how a ceremony is run and what the order looks like, you need to go check that one out. If you don't want people walking down the aisle before the ceremony starts, consider putting in a little aisle blocker, which could be ivy, it could be a ribbon, something from back chair to back chair, and blocking off the aisle so no one walks there, so it doesn't mess up your petals or you don't get footprints on your aisle runner, etc. Tip number 4, consider an unplugged wedding sign. Now, a lot of people have these days, so guests are kind of ignoring them sometimes, so we're gonna have a little bit of an extra tidbit in just a moment, but I highly recommend having an unplugged ceremony so then you avoid anyone sticking their phone up or, a camera, DSLR, an iPad, for heaven's sake, to get a picture of you and your fiance during your ceremony. Make sure that there's some sort of signage indicating that. Additionally, if you're unsure what signs you should have at your wedding day, I'm gonna link that video down below for you to check out because I promise you I'm gonna run out of cards at a certain point. So I will link that down below, as well as any of the other videos I've been mentioning. Tip number 5, make sure your officiant is centered. So whether you're practicing with them or not, whether they are at the rehearsal or not, they need to be at a center point, because if they are off center, your photos from your ceremony are going to drive you absolutely bonkers because they're going to be off to the side a little bit or not centered on your arbor or your floral display. If you need to, go as far to mark it out and point it out to the officiant or have someone else do this on your behalf so you don't have to worry about on the day of your wedding being like, hey, Richard, this is where you stand. Thanks, pal. Good looking out. Talk to you later. Have someone else handle this for you so you don't have to worry about that detail. Also, because where the officiant stands will define where you and your fiance will stand in front of them. So if they're off center, everything's off center. Tip number 6, before your ceremony actually even begins, I highly encourage you to have your officiant walk out and make the unplugged announcement. The sign is cool, right? Some people will pay attention to the sign. The other people will not, okay? So have your official walk out and say, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin our ceremony, blah, 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 blah. We kindly ask that you keep all cell phones, video cameras, DSLRs, and iPads tucked away so you can be present for the ceremony. Don't worry, we'll have professional photos. We will get those to you afterwards. But please, don't stand in the way of a $3,000 photographer. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Oh, but like a polite version of that. There is a hack to an unplugged ceremony, though, that will make all of your guests extremely satisfied, which we'll get to in just a minute. Tip number 7, processional songs. Processionals when everyone's walking in. How many songs do you need? You will need anywhere from 1 to 4 songs. If you have not already downloaded our music guide from our favorite DJ, I'm gonna go ahead and link it down below for you to check out so you can see how many potential songs you might need for your entire event, not just for this particular part of it. But it could be one song for everyone. It could be one song for family, for your fiance and whomever they're walking down with, or maybe their side of the wedding party. Could be your wedding party in its entirety, and then you. So it could be 1, could be 2, could be 3, could be 4. You've got some options here. Remember though, the more complicated you make this, the more difficult it will be for a non-professional DJ to pull off. It's still going to be pretty difficult for a professional DJ to pull off if you have a bunch of different songs though. So let's add some flexibility in here. I definitely don't recommend 4. I think like 1, 2 tops is a much better idea, but you've got some wiggle room here. Tip number 8, as your wedding party is walking in, make sure that they are spacing themselves evenly and not walking too quickly. Your photographer is going to be snapping photos of every grouping, pairing, or singular person that walks down the aisle. What you don't want is them so close together that your photographer cannot get a clean shot of your wedding party or of your family members as they're walking. So, when you are practicing this at your rehearsal, encourage them to have equal pacing in between groupings or in between singular people to accommodate for those photos. Which brings us to tip number 9. Let's talk about the order. This gets a little emotional for some people because they're like, I don't know how to define one relationship being more important than another relationship, and I don't really want to put like someone on a pedestal and ignore other people. But I also don't want to make this about their height because maybe somebody's sensitive about that and that can make things really, really awkward. Here's the best way, the simplest way to order your wedding party in your ceremony that has the least amount of emotional attachment and won't offend anyone's height, size, or lack thereof. And that is start from those that have known you the longest to those that have known you the shortest. It's just the length of your relationship. It is something that cannot be argued against, right? Where you're like, look, it's my sister. Arguably, I've had the longest relationship with her. And this is only if you're looking for an order to put them in. You don't have to do this at all, but it does remove a lot of the emotion and potential tension around the wedding party order. It could be cousin is closer to you, college roommate is the furthest from you because you've known them the least amount of time. That is a solid way of organizing your wedding party that very rarely hurts feelings because it's relatively factually based. That's not factually based on people's height. Tip number 10, if you have kids involved, you need to have a plan. Okay? You need to have a pitcher and a catcher. The pitcher is the person that releases the child at the back of the aisle. This person needs to stay with that child. The younger they are, the more likely they're going to need to stay there at the back of the aisle until it's time for them to walk down or multiple children to walk down. I have been this person as a wedding planner to release the children down the aisle if need be, but ideally it's going to be someone they know. Someone that's going to encourage them to smile, to be, walking ideally in a straight-ish line, and then someone to receive them at the opposite end that they know. That's a grandparent. That's a parent, that's an aunt, that's an uncle, someone to be like, come on, keep coming. The younger the child or children, the more important this detail is. Tip number 11, bribery is not beneath us. If you need a child to be incentivized to walk down the aisle, I have seen multiple parents and or parental figures or adults be like, here's some candy, keep walking. Or incentivize them with something a little bit later on, especially if they seem hesitant. And this is a bonus tip. It wasn't actually on the list, but I'm including it now. If the child does not want to walk, don't do it. Don't. It's not fun for them. They're sobbing. It's not cute. They're feeling forced into it. It's just sad and kind of awkward for everybody. So make sure whoever is pitching the child down the aisle is aware that they might need to be pulled at the last minute should emotions arise, and make it not fun for everyone involved. Tip number 12, if you are sending children down the aisle, ideally buffer with bigger kids. So if you've got a 3-year-old, make sure they walk with a 6-year-old. You don't have to have the flower girl and the ring bearer. Well, first of all, you don't have to have the flower girl and ring bearer, but you don't have to have the flower girl walk separately from the ring bearer if combining the two ups our chances of a straight, successful line. Okay? Just like directly like that. Tip number 13, give the catcher a home base. So whoever is receiving the child needs to have a seat that is in one of the front few rows on the outside. So make sure they have a designated spot, they know where they're going so they can kind of crawl up not crawl, but you know what I mean. Like walk up and hunch down to receive the child, be like, come on, come this way, take the child, and then go sit down with them. Ideally not in the front row, because children can just get antsy and it can be a little bit distracting. Kids are cute. Trust me, I've got 4 of them. I'm obsessed with children. But I'm also aware that they have smaller attention spans than a lot of adults, and they get wiggly when they get bored. So if you can have the parent or whoever is receiving them go on the outside, they can book it out if they need to without causing a disturbance. Tip number 14. Do not have children stand with your wedding party. Remember the wiggling? Don't do it. Tip number 15. Once you get your wedding party up there, you're going to want to have them pay attention to their hands, their feet, and their spacing. Every single wedding planner has like slightly different advice to give here. So some say turn your feet this way. Some say turn them that way. Some say put your hands here. Some say put your hands there. Hold them like this. Hold them like this. Hold them like this. Hold them like this. They've got different suggestions. Here's the deal. You just want it to have continuity. Okay, that's the only thing we're trying to achieve here. All bouquets are held at belly button. Not Von Trapp, not too low, but right at belly button, right? So it looks nice and neat and clean. Make sure all the feet are pointed in the same direction. People say follow the bride, but that's weird because then you have to like shuffle your feet. I usually say keep them at a 45-degree angle so you can kind of turn and see whatever's going on. And then as far as spacing is concerned, even if you do not have evenly sided wedding parties, you can space them accordingly to fill up the same range. So let's say we've got 8 on this side and 6 on this side. Space the 6 out a little bit further so visually it takes up the same amount of space. It'll end up looking pretty good in photos. Just make sure the spacing isn't radically large. Tip number 16. Let's talk about your entrance. In order to avoid any sort of fashion or makeup faux pas, have someone double check you before you go down the aisle. Because you want to make sure your hair is like the way you want it to be and your lipstick looks good and not on your teeth. Your veil is fluffed appropriately. Your train is like elegantly placed. Have someone prepared, whether that's your coordinator, someone who's working at the venue, or maybe just a family member or friend who's ready to just like make sure you are golden, okay? Ready to go. This isn't the time to be like, oh, I'm sure it's fine. Just have someone double check. Tip number 17, if you are going for a dramatic entrance, you need to practice. And you need help. Listen, your girl loves the moment when like the song swells and the doors open, but guess what? You can't open the doors for your own ceremony. And you need to notify the DJ or whoever's running sound, which it should be a DJ if you're going to be really specific with the timing of these things. You need to make sure this person knows how to run their sound equipment and knows how to like play the song at the right time. I worked with Dom from the wedding duo. He's like TikTok famous. I absolutely adore him. He was so much fun to work with on Liana's wedding. And he is masterful about getting the timing and just like where the music goes, or we hit the bridge, or the chorus starts, and like that's when the entrance happens. So ideally you're gonna have a professional in this situation. If you want doors opened, you're gonna want those to close after the last wedding party member walks down and opened dramatically, not one at a time, okay? Because that's silly. And then like one open and they run, you know, you just, okay? You need help. Behind every dramatic bridal entrance is usually a coordinator, an assistant, and a well-timed DJ. Doesn't just happen. Tip number 18, when the doors open, wait a second. Pause. Or if you need to shuffle a couple of feet into the ceremony space, do that, but wait for a moment. This is twofold. One, because it's a really cool moment and you can just be like, like all the people that I love and that I want to hang out with are here. Holy wow, they're present. And 2, cool photo moment, right? Because it's like, everyone's there and it's cute and the drama. And 3, it gives people time to stand up because they're supposed to stand up when the bride enters. Okay? Which brings me to tip number 19. If you would like to have people stand, which is the most traditional thing, if a bride is entering, they stand up, you need to have someone ready to cue the people. We typically go to one of 2 people for this. One, the moms in the front row, if you've got moms present. We say, hey, can you cue everybody? Well, like when they're here, can you stand up to like encourage people to stay? Do you like I'm like physically trying to lift them up with my hopes and dreams? Can you cue them by standing up yourselves? Like you be the person to do that. Because if they're looking forward and they're not looking behind them, they may not know that they've arrived and like we need to cue them. Or 2, have the officiant make the announcement and say, please rise or please stand to just signify like, hey, you should be upright right now and not on your key stick. Tip number 20, practice the pass off. If you are walking in with your dad or with someone, an uncle or a father figure or just someone, mother, who cares? If you're walking down with someone and you're meeting your fiance at the top of the aisle, things get weird. I don't know what it is at this point, but people are like, I forgot how to hug or like shake hands, or like, do I abandon you to go shake his hand, or do I hug you and then hug what do I do? Practice this, because it's this is one of those reasons that a rehearsal is super helpful. So let's say it's your dad walking down the aisle. Here's one way that you can do it. You can have him like side hug you first and then reach out and shake your fiance's hand, or lean in and give him a hug, and then simply put his hand on your lower back and just kind of like encourage you forward. I've seen, if someone's passing him off physically, like taking the hand and passing it physically off to your fiance, sometimes that looks romantic, sometimes it looks super weird. So I find just like the hug, kiss, whatever, handshake, hug, kiss, whatever, and then like gentle guidance or stepping back and like some sort of I release you type motion. Which, again, we've done this in ceremony videos before. People get spicy about their opinion on whether they want to be given away or not, and whether they agree with the idea behind it or not. That's neither here nor there. If you are subscribing to that and you want to do that, that's how you would smooth over the physical transition from walking in with someone to standing next to your fiance, whether or not you're being given away. And while I have 20 more tips left to go, I'm going to go ahead and put pause on this video because this has ended up being a lot longer than we anticipated, and we are going to catch up with the next 20 tips in the next video. So that's what we have for this week's video, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. What has been your favorite tip so far? Like, what were you like, haha, I didn't realize that was a thing, and I'm super glad that I watched this video. If you are planning on running your own rehearsal, please come join me over in the master plan. I will tell you exactly how to do it as stress-free and as easily as possible, because you deserve a stress-free rehearsal day and wedding day. If you haven't done so already, jump on down there, hit that like button, and subscribe to this channel for more tips and tricks for the modern day bride. And until next week and the following 20 ceremony tips, bye guys!